Okay, I'm going live. Okay.
Oh, right. Okay.
I got audio. Yeah, it's gonna be like 30 seconds delayed though.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Josh, that microphone's actually part of the screen.
yeah, I know. I can't do anything. We could zoom that in a little bit. That'll get live.
Do you need to see her?
I'll see her when we get to voting.
Okay.
You have her on there too.
I don't.
Okay, good evening, everyone. If you would, we'll begin our meeting with the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jumping right in, we'll start approval of our minutes from our previous meeting in March. If I could have a motion, please. Second. Okay, any discussions or changes on this? Okay, all those in favor then? Thank you. I believe we have any correspondence from the board in general. We can go over some committee reports, facilities, Mr. Prada, you got something to share tonight?
The only thing that I see that we talked about, that is going to be talked about by the architects or construction managers, is the discussion of phase 3, and that design for phase 3 of our capital project. That's set for mid-May submission to SED, the summer of 2022 construction. And at the time of that meeting, it was supposed to be a 65% review of design meeting anytime now. So is that scheduled, is that on track? It was supposed to be for mid-April, so.
We're meeting tomorrow and we'll be going over that time.
Okay. Yeah, that was it. Anything else is going to be discussed later on?
All right. Thank you. Policy committee, Mr. Hager?
Yes, the policy committee met on March 25th. Last month we had some sort of preliminary discussions on the issue of putting stop arm cameras on new school buses. As of now, the committee is recommending that the district not pursue this because on basically the advice of council. Local law enforcement, Mr. Brady spoke with a couple of folks from the state police and the local police department. They are supportive of the idea, but our lawyer, Susan Johns, our school attorney, is recommending that we not go in this direction because of the fact that the current law that allows the stop arm cameras to be installed on buses and used requires an intermunicipal agreement from between the district and the local municipality. There are just a lot of legal things that don't really go in the district's favor. So Ms. Johns is encouraging us to not go in this direction despite the fact that the local law enforcement is generally in favor of it. We looked at a few Area 1 policy updates as well at our last meeting, including policy 7551, sexual harassment of students, policy 8130, equal educational opportunities, and 7553, hazing of students. And these are all updates from Area 1 that are based on the updates to the Title IX law. There are a couple of those are on for first reading tonight, but we're, the third, we're going to add some additional language that we'll be reviewing next month before we bring it back to the full board. We also continued our review of the 6,000 series policies, and 3 of those had some just minor modifications to language, and those are up for first reading tonight. You'll see those. And that's it.
Any questions for?
Yeah, I just have a question about stop arm cameras. Would it just require an agreement? Is that what she's suggesting, that we get an agreement?
No, if I understand the law correctly, and please step in if need be, Pat. The municipality actually has to purchase the stop arm cameras, because when the police agency, they want that video to be theirs. They don't want it to be the district's and then have it turned over to the municipality or to the law enforcement agency. And there are legal reasons for that not being a good thing. So because an intermunicipal agreement would need to be in place, she says she would prefer us not do this.
Anyone else? Moving on to Finance Committee, do you have anything?
Yeah, well, you're going to see the budget presentation tonight. Things aren't as grim as what we thought they were going to be a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. And administration's done a good job of understanding the different strains of funding. We have federal funding coming in, 2 different types of federal funding coming in. And of course, our regular state aid. The state has committed to fully funding foundation aid, which if they follow through will help our school district in the next few years for sure. But there's a lot to unpack in the funding and a lot of different hoops to jump through when using the federal funding, so we're still analyzing a lot of that. There'll be a full presentation later.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Tom? Okay, next up would be our student representative, Ms. Durant. Yes.
We don't have much updates from the students. Since last meeting, we had a successful fall 2 season. We are starting the musical, and I know we're moving forward with the prom committee. And I also heard that we have a lot of students that I've talked to coming back for the last quarter who haven't been in school all year, so that's really good to see. And also we have the concert band is now practicing in the band room instead of the auditorium.
Any questions for Delaney? Okay. I do have a few things myself tonight. First, we'll start. We have a school board election coming up soon. So we have 5 candidates.
5 candidates.
So Andy's going to help us, and we're going to draw out of the hat to decide the order the candidates will occur on the ballot. So, along with our voting for our budget in May, the public will also vote on our board candidates.
The first name is Christy Baker. Patricia Murphy. Tim Hayes. Christopher Castell. And Angela Frost.
Thank you, you guys. To say it again, that'll be the order the candidates fall on the ballot come May. Next would be talk a little bit about the BOCES. This is we have it on a Monday night because we coincide it with the BOCES of the district we belong to. So tonight we will be asked to vote on the administrative portion of the BOCES budget. So, I wrote a couple numbers down here. The BOCES budget itself is $65,900,000. The administrative budget is $8,500,000. So about 13% of the the total budget is what the school districts within the BOCES vote on each year. So they've asked us to vote on that, and if they would not get enough votes, they would go to contingency budget, similar to what would happen with us. And also, along with their candidates, they have 3 openings on their board. We have a number, I think there's 5 also candidates for the BOCES board, so we will, when it come time to do actions, we'll ask from our group if anyone will nominate any of the 5, and then we'll vote on that person. Pass or fail, we'll move on. And how many we nominate? If we only nominate 1, so be it. If we nominate 5, so be it. But the top 3 vote getters will be the ones that our district will approve and send on to the BOCES. Any questions on that? All right, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Brady.
Thanks, Pat. There's one name that was missing from that group, and that was yours.
Nobody's supposed to know this.
Oh, okay. I didn't see. There'll be time for that at a different time. Okay. So first on my list tonight is we're very happy to have Patrick Longo back. Patrick is with the New York State School Boards Association. He is their member relations manager, and he's here to give a presentation to the district. Welcome back, Patrick.
Where would you like me to stand? Do I need to keep my mask on, or?
If you're standing, you would. Yeah, you would.
There?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
There is a podium as well.
Actually, there's a podium right there. I want to get there.
I think because we're going to do a lot of
Yeah, we can turn lights on.
You guys see me? Thank you. So I want to thank you on behalf of New York State School Boards Association, our president, Fred Langstaff, and our executive director, Bob Schneider. For those of you who weren't here, I've been here a couple of times actually, or we have, and I'm representing a program called Champions of Change. And Champions of Change was a program that NISBA started to recognize all the fantastic things that districts are doing across the state. And this is an unsolicited thing that we do. Nobody solicits us, nobody submits anything and says, hey, we have this program. We look for programs all across the state that have some unpublished criteria. And we do have a committee that chooses them. And this is the 3rd time that the Massena Central School District has been recognized for programming. And really, Champions of Change, what we try to look for are programs that we feel are bringing change to really the district, the students, and then to the community, and then the world. A lot of programs sometimes could be something that are done once, something that are done twice. It could be programmatic, it could be an initiative. But we look for things that really feel like it has student involvement, community involvement, if possible. And we've just been seeing some really great things coming out of this district. And so someone might look at this and say, do you hand these things out all the time? This is the 3rd time we've done this. And really, I would say that's really atypical. So I think it's a testament to the great work that you guys are doing. And not only the work, but also the local press that you guys get. It makes us aware of these programs. I think you've got a really good relationship going there. And so we were made aware of yet another program. And if you're following us, obviously you guys, you're part of our association. Your district is a member in New York State School Boards Association. And we've been making a big push this year through policy for DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one thing that we've noticed with the pandemic, that internet access is a big problem, not just in this area, and all of New York, all across the country. And so when you have where you go to virtual learning, you start to see really where the gaps are. And so there's a program we were made aware of, and it was, we call it the Internet Access Program. And again, internet access really is if you think about it, it's an equity issue, right? So that people are getting the education they can. There's a lot of self-learning going on right now as well. And the kids are learning through YouTube and different videos, and it's not just the district, but it's also, you know, they can learn on their own as well. And so we're gonna see probably some big learning gaps. I'm sure we're all looking at that. And so anything we can do to close that gap in a regular school year, much less in a pandemic, is something we think is really bringing great change. So I want to present this banner. I believe you have some program representatives here.
We do.
So it says Champions of Change for Kids, and this recognizes Massena Central School District Board of Education for their internet access program. If you could just give you guys a self round of applause. And so we hope that you guys will hang it another banner for all to see, and we really look forward to seeing more programs in the future. Obviously, this year, you know, some things are cut in the budget, you know, and so it's been really tough, but you guys are doing great work. Glad to have you as members, and congratulations. Thanks for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Patrick, we have a few special guests we've asked to come here tonight that can take a picture with you for this program. Kristen Colarusso Martin is our director, our community schools director, which a lot of the programs that we start to support the community and provide that equity is Kristen's work. And Zach Monroe is here from PALS, the Police Athletic League, and we partner with them for after-school programming, including providing access to internet for our students. And Robert Bender, I see in the back, Robert's from the Salvation Army, and he came to us this year and asked what the Salvation Army could do for us in partnership. And we talked to him about providing hotspots for our kids. And they ended up providing 25 hotspots so our students could have access. And so, in the local public library, Lane Dunthayer couldn't be here tonight, but they've also been providing that support as well. So it really is a partnership in this community, and we honor that there are so many that look out for our district and our kids. And that's why we invited them. So I would ask that you guys want to go out and get a photo. That would be great. Angie, you have your phone, maybe you can grab a picture with them. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Great work. Thank
you. Mike Allen, too. You need to be in that photo. Mike and Patrick. Tremendous work. And pardon? Keep up the great work. Well, we have more good news to share tonight as well. We have our valedictorian and we have our salutatorian here tonight with their families. And I'm going to ask Mr. Oliver to come up and he will introduce our special guest.
Yeah.
Hello. Well, first of all, I'm going to do this in reverse order on the agenda, just so you guys know. So Jacob, would you please come on up here and your family? And let me be the first to introduce and acknowledge to the school board the salutatorian of the class of 2021, Mr. Jacob Broussard. Jacob is joined tonight by his mom and stepdad, Jennifer and Craig Chevalier, his little brother, who isn't quite so little, he's catching up pretty fast, Zach Broussard, and I believe his father, Michael, is watching online, so hi, Michael, if you can see me. It's one of the great and unique honors of being the high school principal every year, and I've done this before, even though it's my first year back, to introduce and proclaim the valedictorian and salutatorian of the class. We're fortunate this year to have such strong young men as our valedictorian and salutatorian. Jacob is a young man that's committed to excellence, and that permeates in all that he does in our school. Because of his standards, he helps to raise those around him. When you ask his teachers about him, his teachers will tell you that he has an inherent love of learning, he has an immense raw intellect, and he has a work ethic which has resulted in his achievements in our school this year. Based on his efforts, he achieved an overall average for his 4 years of high school of 98.96 and finished number 2 out of what started as a class of 204 people. He did all this while pursuing the International Baccalaureate program at the high school, and he's really just the kind of kid that you can give any task to and trust that it's going to be done well. He's not just an academic kid, though, as well. He's a man of intense character. He will help out anybody that needs help. You couldn't probably find anybody at Massena High School that would have a harsh word to say about Jacob. As a result of his character, he's been instrumental in our Learn to Lead program and our Link crew program. He's been a peer tutor. He's a member of National Honor Society. Forgive me for reading, but I couldn't remember all this. He's a member of National Honor Society, French National Honor Society. He served as the vice president of the Interact Club. He's a 4-sport athlete, including hockey, football, soccer, and lacrosse. He served as a team captain on the later 2, and in his free time, he has a part-time job. Jacob is planning on, I believe this is official as of this morning, going to U of R. Is that correct now? In the fall, and majoring in biomedical engineering. Massena Central High School staff couldn't be more proud of Jacob Broussard, the salutatorian of the class of 2021. Please hold over there while we go take a picture. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce the valedictorian of the class of 2021, Mr. Luke Von. Luke is joined by his mom and dad, Noreen and Douglas Von Borstel tonight. Thank you for coming. Luke's overall GPA for high school is a 99.49. That's about all I can say to start this. And he's achieved this massive GPA while being part of the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program. He's taking the seal of biliteracy. He's doing many, if not all, of the hardest courses that we offer at our high school. And with that, he still achieved a 99.49. But outside of his academic performance, what Luke is probably best known for in our school is his leadership, his determination, and his empathy. He has got a positive energy and enthusiasm in our building, which is really infectious, and it permeates everything in our school. He's a confident young man, and he uses his position in the school to help lift up the underdogs in our building, and by doing that, he helps elevate everybody that's there. He, like Jake, is involved with nearly everything. He is the vice president of both the National Honor Society and the Spanish National Honor Society, president of the Interact Club. He's a member of Link Crew, Learn to Lead. In a normal year, he'd be part of the pep band and the marching band. He's a three-sport athlete who plays soccer, basketball, and lacrosse. And as a senior, he was recognized as first team All-Northern in boys varsity soccer. In addition to that, he's often tapped for formal and informal mentorship roles around the building with other students. And in his rare free time, he actually is quite a bit of an outdoorsman and likes to be outside as much as he can. Due to his tremendous work ethic, Luke will be attending the College of St. Joseph's in West Hartford, Connecticut next year, where he will be in the physician's assistant program, and I believe he's playing men's lacrosse as well. So, Luke, you've had a phenomenal high school career, and thank you for all that you've added to our building. Mr. Von Borstel, our valedictorian of the class of 2021. I know you guys wanted to with everybody. Next is Trish Murphy. Trish Murphy is here. She's here. So Trish is going to, you come right up, Trish.
Okay, all right. Do you mind if I come over to this corner instead of the podium corner? Okay, thank you.
Trish is going to brief us on plans for community art.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I decided if it was at all possible that it would benefit the students greatly to have an in-person art show. Last year, due to COVID, we were unable to perform having an art show at the St. Lawrence Center Mall as we have been in previous years. So I made a proposal and I gave it to Mr. Brady and to my building principal. And with some tweaking and some different things, I'm hopeful that today you will give us the go-ahead to do this. We're looking at all the safety points that the CDC and the DOH have outlined as far as how many people can be in the interior of the building. So with that, what we would do is we would take every precaution. We would have ourselves, the art teachers, hanging work in pods, so we would not be with each other. We would be doing our own hanging. And then what we would do is we would invite the public also in pods. So a student who's having their parents or their grandparents come, they would arrive in a car together, and they would have to stay in that car until such time that they were allowed to enter the exhibit. So we would have no more than 100 people in the exhibit at one time. The great thing about the venue is that the former Bonton has an entrance on both sides of the building. So both entrances face the airport and like DJs. So we would have people entering through one set of doorways, and then we would have the perimeter of the store lined with the artwork. So the entrance from the mall side would be completely closed, so it would be all contained. And then as visitors move through, they would then exit the west side door, so that we wouldn't have any problems with safety and precautions. Of course, we would have everybody social distance, and we would make sure that everybody had face coverings to enter the exhibit. We really think that the best thing that we could do for our students is to recognize their hard work. Maybe something that you're not aware of, especially if you don't have school-age children, is how much more difficult it is to do artwork, not only remotely, but to do it on Google Classroom, okay? You can't just hit turn in. You have to take a good photograph of your artwork, and then you have to put it in a medium so that it can be uploaded on Google Classroom and be evaluated. So the students have had to kind of move through several different steps to be able to get this done. They have worked really hard. It is amazing that kids are producing artwork even though they're fully at home. It is just mind-blowing. But their love of the curriculum and their love of the medium is just really driving them. And I think in some cases, it's really one outlet or avenue to have self-expression. They are feeling the frustration of being isolated, you know, just like the rest of us, and having so many restrictions on their freedoms. So we would like to recognize that. We really not only would like to recognize the students, but for those of you who are parents of school-age children, we've put a big burden on our parents too. Now they have become kind of teachers' aides and coaches to the kids, as well as mental health experts. So we would like to have a way for the students and the parents to really connect, and possibly grandparents, to really connect and look at the students' artwork, look at their voice, look at their hard work and their effort. And of course, we love the visual arts. It's a great way for people to have conversation starters, not only your own students' work, but other work that you might see from students who, right now, their work is just, I mean, we see it, the teachers, and they submit it, and that's about as far as it goes. We don't even have critiques, so there is a lot of isolation and impediments to people being able to share what they're doing. So we are asking for the support of the board, and of course we will take every precaution, but we would like to try to do this and see what our community feels about having something that is social without, you know, being dangerous, and we think that it's very positive for the whole Massena community. Typically, we have about 300 people at our opening reception. Of course, that would not be really humanly possible, that we can't have 300 people in. So it would be a one-day event. It would be on a Friday evening, and we would just ask the public to come through and to wait in their cars until such time that they can enter the exhibit. We've also asked, usually we have entertainment, we've asked the music department if they would be willing to help us with sound and video, so that we would have on a loop the YouTube Christmas concerts from both the instrumental and the vocal groups here at Massena Central as a way to kind of enhance the experience, and in case anybody missed them on YouTube when they were posted. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And if you can't think of them right now, you can always email me at pmurphy@mcs.k12.ny.edu.
You got some amazing.
Nice to see students.
It is. I think we're really starved for a lot of that.
Yeah, I think we can do that safely, and I think in this time of anxiety and stress, seeing ours is fresh air for the mind, so it's good and relaxing for the people. It's welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
The athletic department and the music department have worked very hard to put plans together to safely do what they do, and I think you've done the same, so, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, Trish came to us with a very solid plan, a safety plan in place. It'll be looking at June 4th. And she described the plan. We'd like to support her. And we appreciate that you're providing this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So next is an update on our capital improvement project. Mike, are you going to set us up with Oh, Jimmy's not, Rob is. Okay, all right.
You're the man.
You're better than a phone call.
I actually enjoyed it. I love to see.
Like the man.
Hey, Ed, it's Mike Allen from Massena Central.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, so I've got you on speakerphone with the Board of Education.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the time to speak.
Thanks, Ed. Good to see you. We also have Rob here as well. And Angie is at the ready with your presentation.
Great. Are we starting with, did Rob already present on phase one, or should we get started there?
You did. We were waiting for you. Are you starting, Rob?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, Rob's going to start.
Great. Terrific.
You got ours up there, Ed?
And it's actually April 9th. This is Jason with the agenda. We'll just shoot right to the next page. We are on schedule for phase one. Obviously, we had to take our hiatus over the winter break. They started back April 5th, and actually several of the operations are going to recommence tomorrow. I'll get into that in just a minute. Phase two, 3 more days, we'll know. Do it 3 p.m. on Thursday. Phase three, that'll probably give an update on that. As soon as we get the drawings, we'll be diving into that, get our estimates of constructability and spring punch list, I know that Jim, by the way, my partner Jim Francisconi made his apologies. He had a prior commitment tonight. Jim's working on staying on task with all the punch list items, and he's fine tuning the schedule, which obviously we have, but it's consolidating and pinpointing duration and coordination amongst the trades in our updated phase two schedule for 2020, phase one schedule for 2021. In other words, the winding down portion. The high school, as you might have noticed walking in, some of the existing wall panels at the main entrance have been removed and prepped for the new metal wall panels. The soccer field work is going to begin near the end of this month. You may have also noticed over at Leary, those wall panels have been removed at the gym and the main entryway, and they were working on those this afternoon in the back. Jefferson's going to bear the brunt of the work in phase two, with nothing right now to report on. At Madison, all the moving materials got relocated from the east side around back to the northwest corner. That's in preparation for starting the site work there, which will be starting possibly this week. They'll be mobilizing. The underground utilities have been located, so we don't take them up. And the roof will be getting out there. The roofing materials have all been ordered for both Madison and Nightingale, as well as miscellaneous other areas. And very pleased to know they're supposed to be here this week. So that's a good sign. And you probably also noticed over at Nightingale, the brokers got up here and put the perimeter railing around, the safety railing is required up there. Admin building, nothing right yet. And transportation, the masonry renovations are going to be starting, the foundation work, and I was out there this afternoon, and Paris and Dow are getting ready to start work on the new bus pedestals for the engine block heaters. So that'll be starting this week as well. Still on budget. Yeah. It can be confusing to people. We allocated in the base bids $632,000 to draw from. 50 changes in scope, minor in nature mostly. The overall phase 1 cost, the total contract, obviously you know. The potential changes of $400,000 include $230,000 that have already been processed, and another $160,000. So basically, you're looking at over $200,000 still hanging out there, should that be required. That hasn't been allocated yet. It's still available. Pay apps were a little more than a third of the way through. Phase 2, well, like I said, we'll know in 72 hours. So we're going to go on with that. Being power reports, obviously, that's going to change dramatically over the next couple of weeks. Anybody have any questions?
So do you see any timeline issues with phase 1? There's a lot of work with Jefferson site work and Madison site work, Madison roof, Nightingale roof, cab, parking lot, ball field. You mentioned the baseball field. What about the baseball field?
I can't give you any details on that yet, because like I said, I'm mostly filling in for Jim at this point.
Okay.
There's a heck of a lot going on this summer, and a lot of it's going to have to be coordinated closely with some of the phase 2 that has to start, especially the new underground electric and all the sites.
Is there anything that gives you heartburn, keeps you up at night, that you would share with
Any
me?
more than any other job? No, nothing jumps out. Actually, no. You got a really good team, and I can tell you, I was looking at the bidder list. There's an awful lot of the same good local contractors and some other good local contractors looking really hard at phase 2. So I think we'll do well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ed. Your turn.
Great, thanks, Pat. Thanks, Rob. That was a great update for phase 1. And so if we're looking at the presentation now, Pat, we can jump right in. We're going to talk a little bit about our capital outlay project. And then we're going to move on to capital improvements. Again, a little more detail on phase 2 and phase 3 from what Rob has shared with you. And then the bulk of tonight is I did want to do a report on our building condition survey that is now complete for our 2020 cycle. So if we go ahead on to page 3, as I said, first and foremost, our capital outlay, we actually, construction started in our break week beginning on April 5th. And actually, we're very excited that the physical construction was actually done 2 days later. We were anticipating that it could possibly go a little bit longer, but fortunately, the particular contractor, environmental and fueling systems, hit it with a large crew. So they were actually done with the physical construction in 2 days. And then from there on, we've been working with them on the electronics portion of it, and there's still a little bit of work left there to complete as well with the district. But we've done well with our costs. Our current construction costs are at the $83,429. And then also, too, one of the things that you'll see tonight is our only change order so far for the project, which is for a credit, actually. And to kind of get into a little bit of the detail on this, when we were looking at the initial fuel station, we had landlines connecting the fuel pump system to the head end of the system in the main building for the transportation facility. As we got into construction and during some of our pre-construction meetings, it was thought that the existing lines and existing conduits may be way too difficult to actually get the wires through. So the contractor actually proposed giving us a credit in changing to a wireless system. And in addition to that, since that's a kind of a bit of an easier installation and we didn't have to run the wires and conduit, that they could save on some time, and since we could make that 2-day window, we were allowed to get a savings on a temporary fuel station as well. And so the savings totaled $8,181 that we were able to get back on that construction project. So I think things went well as far as the physical construction. I think things are operational now and running well. We are holding the contractor to some work that they have to come back and finish up on the punch list, and then also some digital work they need to assist us on as far as getting the system, all the kinks worked out of the digital into the system and the head end. Any questions at this point for our capital outlay project?
Yes. So, understanding this is wireless communication and knowing that technology doesn't always work, and also understanding that just about every village entity gets fuel here, can these things still pump gas in the event that the wireless dies?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a manual override on the pump, and in fact, I believe that's how they tested the system to begin with. So, yes, if the wireless system breaks communication, there is a way to manually override the pumps and still get gas, especially for our emergency vehicles.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Any other questions?
looks like we're good on the capital outlay.
Great. And actually, you'll see on slide 4, there are some pictures of the new login station and the new pump sets that you see there that are all installed. Moving on to page 5, you'll see we'll just give a brief update here on our capital improvement phases. As Rob was saying, phase 2 is on the street. We received our commissioner's approval on March 19th, and we went out to bid and advertised on March 24th. And our bid opening is Thursday this week, April 22nd at 3 p.m. As Rob said, we're seeing actually a flurry of activity and questions from bidders, so we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping for a good bid. It seems to have quite a bit of interest. And so we'll be reporting to you here shortly as to how our bid opening works for phase 2. And again, just as a quick reminder, our phase 2 is primarily the bulk of the work being the 3 elementary schools with some minor work at the high school and also at the transportation facility. And as phase 3 mentioned, and I'll just kind of update it as quickly as we were talking about, we're anticipating a May submission for phase 3, which is the bulk of the work is the high school interior work, and then also Leary Junior High School. There is some minor support work at the Central Administration Building, and once again, a few things at the Transportation Center, but there again, that phase 3 bulk of the scope is the high school and the junior high. And once we submit in May for the SED submission, we'll be anticipating going out to bid for that particular project. It will actually be ahead of the schedule since that work will start the summer of 2022. So we can take a look along with CNS, our partners in the district, to see when is the most advantageous time to bid, whether it's in late summer or early fall. Any questions on our phase 2 or our phase 3?
Kevin, you asked earlier about the bid sets and when we would, or not the bid sets, but the specs, when we would be reviewing that.
No, I mentioned the 65%.
Or the 65%.
That's tomorrow, we said, or next day?
Is, well, I said we were meeting tomorrow and we'll be discussing that. I'm not sure if that's what's tomorrow. Ed, the question is, when are we meeting on the 65% bid sets? we set a date for that tomorrow?
Yes, that's correct.
Other questions? Okay, and the building condition survey?
Yes, so moving on to our building condition survey, all of our data for the building conditions portion has been submitted to SED and has been processed. And just kind of as a reminder, really what this first step is documenting accurately the complete conditions of all of the facilities that the district has that are occupied spaces. And so all of that information has been uploaded to SED's portal and has been processed. Now we enter into the phase 2 of the building condition survey process, which is really creating your 5-year plan. And really what we'll be doing is meeting with stakeholders to review programmatic needs, meeting with the facilities committee to prioritize all of the scope that's identified, and then scheduling that over the next 5-year cycle. One of the things too to be aware of is this particular phase doesn't really have a deadline as far as submission to SED. What happens is as we develop the 5-year plan, and it's something that's constantly updated, the executive summary will be part of all of your future projects now and gets submitted with the paperwork to SED as part of your future projects. So that's kind of the piece of the process that we're into now. And also too, for the board members, reading pleasure at night, included in your packets were the full 350 pages of the conditions assessment that we did upload to the portal. But for tonight, instead of going through the whole 350 pages, we'll just kind of be going through a summary for each of the buildings to update you on each of the conditions of what we found. I did want to mention and remind everyone at this point to keep in mind that, again, the overall building rating you'll see is unsatisfactory for each of these buildings. Now, that's not for occupancy. Please keep in mind that all of the buildings are safe and all of the buildings currently have certificates of occupancy in place and up to date so that it is safe for instruction. For a building condition survey, what the rating of unsatisfactory means is that the building isn't fine as is. There are capital improvements that need to be planned and need to be done in the upcoming years. So that's really all of our unsatisfactory means, is that future work does need to be planned for these facilities. And you'll see here some of the unsatisfactory items that come up are a lot of infrastructure items dealing with the plumbing systems, mechanical systems, and electrical systems. Many of these systems, if not all, are included in our current phase 2 and phase 3 of the project. So that's one of the nice things that you'll find is that our major capital improvements project right now is taking care of those items that were deemed as unsatisfactory and ultimately generating the building rating as unsatisfactory. So for here, for Jefferson, as you can see, that fits right into that mold that we're talking about. On page 7 here, you'll see the overall building rating, and then you'll see several of the items that came up as unsatisfactory. As we move on to the next page, on page 8, you'll see that here are some of the items that were not included in the capital project that are more long-term items. All of these particular items are actually in fairly decent shape and are maintained currently, however, are reaching their end of useful life. So you'll see there's some items such as some plumbing items, some site items, and then a few minor items within the building, such as interior finishes of block, wood corridor finishes, terrazzo floors, and some other plumbing items as far as toilet room reconfiguration. These all were actually what we'll be planning for beyond our phase 3 of our current capital project and into the next 5-year cycle of work coming up. As we move on to Madison and Nightingale, once again, we see many of the items are plumbing, and again, we're on page 9. Many of the items are plumbing, infrastructure type items that we're looking at that generated that unsatisfactory item, roofing. All of these, once again, included in our current capital improvements project. As we move onto page 10, some of the items that we are planning outside of our current project in phases. Again, very similar in nature to the other projects, such as the walking trail, backstop fencing, some of the finishes in the building, and some plumbing systems.
I have a question.
Here again, you'll see similar things at Nightingale.
Quick question.
Yes?
Ed, question.
How does the number work?
Yeah.
What is the number 40 on the left side? How do you come up with those numbers?
He's talking about the numbers that, like 40 is the sanitary main, 58 is the walking trail, etc.
Yes, those numbers tie right to the State Education Department's building condition survey. So that kind of helps you if you're looking for where that number is enumerated in that giant stack of 350 pages I sent you. That's actually how you find that. That's what that number is referring to.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
And so as we move on to page 11, we'll see that Nightingale is very similar to our other two elementaries, with a few minor site items, some plumbing items, and some interior finish items. As we move on to the high school, on to page 12, you'll see here, again, very similar items for our unsatisfactory rating. One of the things that I will mention that does stick out, the structural floors category is actually not that the structure is compromised, it's that we do have some repairs to some columns that we want to address. Currently, there's no structural failures and no issues with safety. This is just for long term for the concrete. And as we move on to page 13, you'll see some items that we're taking a look at. Again, essentially the stadium lights, upgrading to LED, some paving replacement that's needed, exterior bleachers, support bleachers, fencing, and some other items within the building, such as some of the plumbing items and some minor mechanical pieces that are not included in our current project. As we move on to page 14, you'll see our junior high school. And here again, similar as we found in all of the buildings, and some of the minor items as far as some asbestos tile and some other infrastructure items such as our heating, ventilation, control systems. All of these included in our current capital project. And again, moving forward for our future projects, we're looking at some very similar items as far as plumbing, toilet rooms, so looking at lockers potentially, and drinking fountains. I will mention at this point, especially due to the lockers made me think of this, there are some items that are moved out to the future here that we've documented in the building condition survey that we are trying to creep into our current capital project. We actually have some alternate structures that have been built in, so that if there are, if we do have a good bid environment and we do have some funds available, that we'll be able to actually move those projects and move those particular items forward as alternates. But if we move on to page 16, you'll see our central administration building. Again, some of the items here, again, common with the infrastructure items that we'll see. And then as far as future projects, we have some finished work on the exterior and interior of the building that we're taking a look at, along with some concrete slab restoration and then some plumbing items as well. On page 18, you'll see we have our transportation facility. And there was just a few items there. Obviously, the transportation facility being a newer building, there's just a couple things that we needed to take a look at that's included in the current project. And then for future projects moving forward, we're looking at some exterior siding replacement, some flooring replacement, and then some plumbing work inside of the building.
Quick question.
So any questions on our building condition survey?
Yes.
Mr. Gobert has a question.
So Those numbers on the left, that meant, there was a list, I mean, the numbers that we saw earlier, so there's a lot of items, like 150 items. We didn't see any numbers lower than 40. So what is are they the top items? Why do we only see items that are at the bottom of the list?
So Ed, the question is, there were a lot of items, you showed some of the items. Why did we just see some of those items?
And we didn't see the top
Why,
of the list.
why were those shows? Why did we see the top of the list?
Are we talking about where we have costs, the items that we have costs associated with?
No, they all had costs associated, but like you had number 40, number 98, different numbers in there that tended to be higher numbers, questioning whether one's like 1, 2, 3, 4 on the list.
Oh, those are building condition survey numbers that did not need work. So since this is all tied to the building condition survey, as a for instance, let's say if number 40 was the sanitary main, number 39 is culverts that are storm culverts that are in good condition, so they don't need work, so they don't appear on the list.
Okay, thanks.
Just the unsatisfactory.
I have a question too.
Right, yeah, exactly. And all of them appear in the report that I provided for the board, so that documents everything. So you see in there all of the others that are in good condition as well.
Question from Paul.
Ed, this is probably going to sound really stupid, but all of the building condition survey results result in unsatisfactory ratings. The opposite of that is satisfactory? Or is there more of a scale than that?
Actually, there's several ratings that can be achieved. There's unsatisfactory and satisfactory are the most common. There's also critical failure, and there's also like a safety hazard designation. So really, all the unsatisfactory means is that there is work that needs to be planned for capital improvements coming up in the future. Satisfactory usually means that there is minimal work coming up for future projects, and that there really is not much that needs to be done.
Okay, so 5 years down the road, when we do the next building conditions survey, we should expect to see what for the overall building ratings? Or can you tell?
So at that point, most of our infrastructure items will be addressed in our current capital project.
Right.
So it's tough to tell, but my guess would be at that point, most of our buildings will have a satisfactory rating.
Okay, great, thank you.
You mentioned the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan is what SED uses in vetting any future capital projects. And you mentioned the timeline on when that needs to be completed. And in understanding and tying this back to what we just discussed in finance the other day, we're going to have money for a while that we might not have expected. So is there a way that we could tie these things together so that maybe hold off if the 5-year plan isn't required right now, or wait and see what we're going to do or need within our district, so that we don't paint ourselves in a corner with a 5-year plan? I don't know if you get, if that might not even be a question for Ed, that might just be a broader spectrum question.
Yeah, no,
You know,
I kind of heard that, and actually, I think to that effect, really, everyone should understand that the 5-year plan is an ongoing process that really should be evaluated at least once a year, if not more, with the facilities committee. So it's an ever-changing kind of plan and document, and SED actually acknowledges that and encourages you to constantly kind of update that. So that's where I said, I heard I believe I heard the term like paint yourself in a corner with a 5-year plan. That's the part that should always change. The conditions assessment is the part that got submitted, because that's kind of your factual information of what is the condition of the physical element of the building that the district owns, right? The 5-year plan has kind of more of where is the district headed? Do we want to include items about where is education headed in the future, and do we want to begin to prepare for some of those elements? And really, how do we, like you said, how do we schedule and achieve the capital improvements with the finances that are available. So I think it's a very good point, because we need to keep in mind that that 5-year plan can constantly change and be updated.
Okay. Any other questions for Ed?
Ed, Ed, you may not be able to hear me, it's Pat. I just wondered, we're seeing, individuals locally, like our construction material costs are going way up. I just wonder in general if you're concerned with that, with our upcoming bids, if that's gonna factor in.
I mean, and actually I'll defer to my partner in crime, Rob, as well. It is always a concern for us, Pat, and one of the things specifically I think that we've seen most recently is aluminum and metal prices going up, which affect, a lot of our electrical wiring. And that's something that we've seen kind of be affected. But a lot of the other prices have been actually pretty decent. I don't know, Rob, did you want to kind of chime in as well on that?
Yeah, I guess a little, same thing. We haven't seen any out-of-sight bids come in, and it's unfortunate that a lot of the residential construction guys are gonna get hurt because of wood. Lumber's the killer for everybody. You know if that's happening, $10 for a 2x4, $40 for a sheet of plywood. I don't think the impact is gonna be as drastic on the commercial, heavy institutional work yet, that I haven't seen. I mean, obviously the price of gasoline makes a difference, the price of diesel fuel makes a difference. I haven't seen a drastic impact yet. Certainly there's gonna be integral effect.
Good.
Anything else, Ed?
No, that's it for us. Any other questions?
I guess we're good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Rob.
everyone.
Thank you, thank you all. I'll pass on the budget presentation.
All right, we'll move on to the pandemic update. There's been, as you've probably been reading, there's been a lot of changes in Department of Health guidance as of late, and I did attach to the board agenda the new guidance in regard to social distancing in schools. There was also some guidance that came out last week on end-of-the-year events that we have been waiting for. We did have our districts met with public health on Friday to look at some of these questions. So just want to go through some of the main pieces of it and talk about what we're doing to try to respond and get more students back into school. So under the new guidance, school districts may choose to reduce physical distancing from 6 feet to 3 feet between students, not with adults. So in a classroom, there still needs to be 6 foot between the adult teacher, for example, and the students, or in any other area where adults are, it still remains to be 6 feet. However, there are some guidelines there from the CDC and now the Department of Health on how that can occur if you're going to move to 3 feet. And they have a chart, which you see in some of the guidance we provided. It's based on the risk factor in each of the counties in each of the states. And so there is a website you can go to. I go to it pretty regularly and look to see what color we are. And the risk where we continue to be running is between the high risk, which is red in St. Lawrence County. Today it went to orange, which is substantial risk. So that's where we've been moving back and forth between those two. And based on where we are in the county, schools, then it impacts decisions by schools. For example, at the elementary level, which they recognize that there hasn't been as much transmission between elementary students, either in school or outside of school, those rules are going to be a little bit different than in the secondary 7 through 12. So when we are in a high-risk zone or a substantial risk, orange or red, for the elementary schools, it's recommended that they cohort. And that's the big piece of this, is if they go to 3 feet, it recommends you cohort. Cohort means that the same group of students move during the day with each other and not intermingle with other students. And that happens most at our elementary. Very common, you have a class of students and they move together even into the specials like art or music. At the secondary 11, 7 to 12, if you are in an orange substantial risk zone, cohorting is recommended, strongly recommended. If you're in a red zone, it's required. So when we look at cohorting, when we look at moving to 3 feet at the from 6 to 3 at the elementary schools, we are already in cohort. At the junior high, we already have cohorting as well. When we're in the lunchroom area, we can keep students cohorted, but they are going to be in there with other students at junior high. But they can be kept in for the most part, in a cohort. A high school, it's the way the schedule works, it's not possible. And that's the way it is in most high schools. Students moving together when they're in a 9 through 12 environment in different math, English, electives, classes, it's just very difficult for them to move together. Or to have a teacher move while the students stay in place, because the students are going to intermingle. So that's much more challenging to move from a 6-foot environment to a 3-foot environment. So we have to follow those Department of Health guidelines as far as the cohorting and what level of risk we're in, which, as I said, we're currently in orange. When students take their masks off for eating meals, they must be 6 feet apart. So this in lies one of the challenges too at elementary. If we move them to 3 feet, they've been eating in the classroom rather than eating in the cafeteria. We've been having them eat. So if they're in there for instruction at 3 feet, but then they have to go back to 6 feet to eat, that's going to be very challenging. So we'll be looking for other places where they would eat, which would be going back to the cafeteria, but that wouldn't be enough of a space either. So we'd have to look at such as the gymnasium and maybe having the physical education classes doing their instruction outside in nice weather, or moving into, pushing into the classroom and that type of thing. We would have to be moving back into eating outside of the classroom in order to make that work. They have with musical instruments, and it was mentioned a little bit earlier tonight, also with PE it was at 12 feet, now we can be at 6 feet for music. That will allow us to be able to have choral groups come back together and be, for example, and so that is something that is beneficial.
Do they have an explanation for that change? Did the science change, or some of their understanding of it?
Moving from the 12 to the 16. I don't know. I have to look at the guidance on it. I don't know why they allow. I think they have, with experience, seen the levels of transmissions in different places, and they're making decisions accordingly. And that's really why you're looking at why we can go from 6 to 3 feet, and why it's different in the elementary versus the high school, because over time we learn more about the virus and how it spreads. They've also provided some additional guidance on ventilation and filtration, which with the ventilation, as you know, we're looking at our project for that. They're no longer recommending physical barriers between students. That would be putting the plastic shields up on desks or when they're eating. They're not recommending that anymore. They'd rather see changes in ventilation or, like going from 6 foot to 3 feet, but keeping the mask on. If we are going to, nothing has actually changed with busing. So busing, is still remains the same, and in lies, besides the eating of meals, another challenge we'll have is with busing. We have 30 bus drivers. We have 2 subs. We have a couple mechanics who can drive bus, but other than that, that's all. If we are going to bring more students back to school, it's going to be a little more challenging because many of our buses are full now based on the capacity that we can provide to from CDC. And we're looking at that, but it is one of the challenges that we have to be overcome because it will be hard for us to add bus runs without having drivers to drive the buses. Kevin?
Yeah, with the personal experience with the quarantining process last winter mandated that the whole bus was quarantined. And something what I was told was that was because that was based on the season and the windows availability open in the cold weather, not being able to open. Will that change moving forward, or are they still going to quarantine the whole bus if one kid on there is positive?
That's a good question. They have been quarantining. If we're opening windows and getting more ventilation in, that's something we have to. Alan, did they cover that at all at that public health meeting?
No, they talked about it, but there was no firm update to it. They said that it was something they were aware of, they were looking at it, but I didn't hear any change in that guidance during that call.
I mean, I would hope that we could advocate in some way for that because all it does is needlessly take away opportunities.
For whatever it's worth, Kevin, Anne Marie's been advocating that position for a while with public health, so I know it's getting out there.
Maybe at the superintendent's level, you guys can hammer them.
But it is, as we do head into the season where we can open windows, it makes some sense. So that's a good question too. So we've been meeting as administrators about meetings later this week. We're looking to see how many students that we can possibly bring back, how many would have to be bused. If we can't bus them, will the parents be interested in bringing them in? Our goal is to get as many back on a 4-day schedule as possible at the end of the year. There's not much time left in the end of the year, but it would be good to get as many back as we can, even this year. And then, of course, hopefully we'll be in a situation we'll be a little more normal going into September. Any changes that we make, we need to engage the public. We are looking at bringing our reopening committee back together, looking at next Monday, and then having a meeting with parents based on our recommendations. And we'll do our best to bring as many back as we can with the resources that we have.
Is there a way to prioritize who you bring back, such as those in higher academic need based on their performance versus those that don't? Or is that any kind of consideration in that process of how you bring kids back? Because what's going to be the cutoff? Is it going to be based on who wants to come back versus who doesn't? Or, so I'm just kind of thinking ahead a little bit about it. I mean,
those conversations are going on between principals and parents all the time. And I saw, Alan, you had your hands up and all. These guys are all nodding their head, but go ahead.
I think I can speak for the group to say that's what we've been doing since day one in this. Every time we bring kids back, we always prioritize our neediest students first. And we've done it on both the high end and the low end.
Okay.
Typically, we're looking special education students that struggle with learning are the first ones back in the door.
okay.
How often can our designation for transmission change?
Weekly. 7-day average. So last week we were in the red zone, and this week we checked, we were in orange. I don't know. That's a little bit of frustration part too.
Yeah, it's tough to.
What happens if you make those plans and then it goes back to red?
Couple sets of plans.
But that is our, is our goal. As I said, the high school would definitely be more challenging because we don't cohort.
As we learned that the disease is more airborne than on surfaces, is there any relaxation on the cleaning of surfaces? At the
No.
beginning, we were cleaning a lot.
They didn't seem to catch up with that science in this latest thing. I noticed that immediately.
They didn't do nothing, I didn't hear nothing, any adaptation, so people, I'm thinking there's janitors and elementary school teachers are still wiping after each kid's.
They had no choice because they didn't take it out of the new guidance.
They didn't, in fact, they reiterated the cleaning in the new guide.
And it doesn't, it's not based on
They don't-
science, correct?
Yeah,
So that part I was surprised. I thought maybe they would lighten up on the cleaning piece based on what they're seeing in the research, but
there's no
It's hard for them to
protection.
give up control when they got it.
So I just wanted to let the board know that is our goal, that's what we are working on, and we'll keep you posted on it. We have to, we received this today, that although we don't have to submit our new plans to the SED, that's what was said. Now it looks like we do have to put them in the portal, but they're not going to go through and reapprove them like they did those reopening plans. But we do need to engage the community before we change. So then we did get some updates on end of the year events, and particularly as Delaney said, there has been discussion on prom. We saw art tonight with the musical. But a lot of focus has been on graduation and what our plans are there. Alan Oliver, the high school principal, put out a video last week to parents just to save the date for the 25th and 26th of June, because it looks like we are going to need 2 nights again of graduation based on these new changes. And we've been focusing on the turf field as the place that we would look at holding graduation this year. Instead of behind the school in a drive-up graduation, this would be an in-person graduation.
Is there anything that stops, probably, I'm sure it's too late, but from having 2 graduations in one day with a separate group of people? 2 separate events in the same day?
In the same day?
Yes.
We're trying to hold them in the evening for the screen, right? I'll turn to maybe Mike or to visualize.
It's somewhat due to the AV components, and it's also somewhat due to temperature.
Yep.
Making sure that if it's a warm day, it'll be cooler at night, because the turf does hold on to heat quite a bit more than.
I don't know, every graduation I've been at, I sweat profusely,
Yeah.
so I don't think it really matters when or where.
So we're trying our best to, keep it in the night, to keep it cool, and keep the AV equipment working at its best.
Okay.
Yeah, the feedback we received last year from those who did hold them on turf fields during the middle of the day was pretty bad, in terms of the heat that was generated off the turf field.
I'm sure it's gonna get it off all evening anyway.
Yeah, yes, it'll be warm. But if we, so the current guidance is 200 people outside, or you can have up to 500 or 33% of your capacity if you check for vaccination or for testing, either a PCR test or a rapid test. I know the county would probably prefer a PCR test, but under New York State guidance, there is the ability also to do a rapid test 6 hours before the event, a PCR test 72 hours before the event, or have your vaccine passport, which you can get online. So we'll need to work through that process as well. We're talking with, we talked with public health about the possibility of setting up a testing site right at the school so that people who are going to be spectators, participants in the graduation might be able to get tested right there. That's what they're doing in larger venues, if you go to a baseball game, hockey game, that type of thing, pro sports, that's what they've set them up right near the
Right from the tailgate, get your test and back to the tailgate.
So, so these are some of the considerations we're looking into as we look at graduation. But the other piece we have to consider is what's the weather going to be like? Because if we got lucky last year. We had a beautiful 2 nights of graduation last year. It's not always going to be like that. Hopefully it will be this year. But otherwise, we would be looking at the gymnasium, and would be less people. We want to at least get 2 in, but we are, I know, working hard to get even more than that at this point. And Alan's got a committee together that's working on that. The last thing I have on this topic is about some fall to sports and spring sports guidelines, and I asked Gavin to come and just brief us on recommended changes to what we're going to be doing for the end of the year here, end of the season on fall and the beginning of spring.
Good evening. Just a couple quick things to start with. First, I'd like to congratulate Jacob Brassard and Luke Borstel. They're not only outstanding in the classroom, they've done a great job, on our fields for their 4 years. So I'm proud to have them, as our salutatorian, valedictorian. Kind of on a side note with Luke Borstel, as we all know, in a regular year, we have fall sports, we have winter sports, and spring sports. And this being a pandemic is a unique year. We had fall, we had winter, and then we turn back to fall too, and then we have spring. Luke is the only male athlete who will be playing in 4 sports. So he will be kicking for football tomorrow, on Thursday, punting for football on Thursday, and then come back with lacrosse. So congratulations to him and both of them. And Pat has asked me to come here today. With the start of spring sports today, I just want to let everybody know that we will be able to have every sports team and every sports level participate in sports during the pandemic from fall to spring other than indoor track. And that was not because of Massena Central, that was because of our venues at St. Lawrence and Pottstown State could not host us. So that's a tribute to all our sports, all the people at Massena Central and our athletes to be able to pull this off. We speak here tonight, Fall 2 will be concluding volleyball and football on Thursday, and Friday will be swimming, so everybody knows. At the same time, we started spring today. So varsity and JV, spring sports started today. Spring sports is way different than it's been in all the other ones. And as Mr. Brady has alluded to, our big challenge around spring sports obviously is make sure our athletes are healthy, but it's going to be busing. We have 3 baseball teams, 3 softball teams, 3 track teams, a golf team, and 4 lacrosse teams that will be starting. So it's going to be a huge issue because of the 22-player maximum. Every team's going to have their own bus. Whereas in previous years, we could put a JV and a varsity baseball team on the same bus. So we've been really, as Section 10 and as a group, and AD's trying to work that out. So when everybody sees some of these later start times, you'll know the reason why. We're very lucky here at Massena Central that we have turf. So we'll be able to, utilize our lights and be able to take care of that. Lastly, on the turf, and I want to thank Mike, and I think I thanked him previously, but in our gym, we have our cameras set up for live streaming, and we have them on the turf now. So going forward, all our games will be live streamed on the turf too. But back to what I'm here for tonight is we have made spectator guidance changes for our fall 2 season, as I said, that will stop on Thursday and Friday. The indoor sports of volleyball and swimming, we will be asking you to allow 2 individuals per Massena Central senior athlete to watch
the contest on senior night and allow the same two individuals to participate in any senior night ceremony. We will be having senior night ceremonies, obviously, in volleyball and swimming. So those are the ones that are indoor sports, so we're just asking, and Section 10 has asked for that, and we're using that guidance for indoor sports, allowing 2 spectators per senior, not per whole team. Our senior volleyball team will have 8 players that are seniors. Actually, we have 7 seniors and 1 student that's a junior that will be graduating early, so we're going to invite their parents because it's their last contest, and then they will participate in the senior ceremony. So we're asking for that change. And all athletes and spectators must be masked at all times during the contest and during any senior night ceremony while in school grounds. All individuals participating in senior night will be asked to fill out a COVID-19 screening form and have their temperature taken to be allowed to enter the event. And that's because it's an indoor event. So we'll get the COVID-19 screening forms to the 2 participants before they come. They will be able to fill out that screening form, come to us, we'll temperature check them, and then we'll escort them into the venue. And also, spectators must be socially distanced from all non-family members. So that's what we're asking for our indoor sports. Football is also in fall too, and it's an outdoor sport, along with the guidance from Section 10. Section 10 will be allowing 2 spectators per athlete for all outdoor sporting events, including football that is in the fall 2 season, as well as the upcoming spring sports season. All athletes, coaches, and spectators must be on the official Section 10 gate list prior to the game time. We are reverting back to what we did in our guidance in the fall. So each team will have a gate list. They will send it on when they travel, and they will hand that to the supervisors at the away event. And we will have our home team's gate list too, so we will have that. So we're having to making that change for football. And just as we said, all athletes, coaches, and spectators must be masked at all times during the contest or in school grounds, and all spectators must be socially distanced from all non-family members. So those are the 2 changes that we're asking for fall 2 sports. When we get to our spring sports, Section 10 has added guidance that we will, we will just be following the New York State return to interscholastic athletics for 2021, fall season 2, and spring edition that's being revised March 25th, 2021. And what that does is allows 2 spectators per athlete on a gate list to come to the outdoor events. We are still looking at wrestling, but Mr. Brady and I have discussed it because of the opportunity that it's only going to be wrestling in there. We have most of the wrestling teams have small numbers, even though it's indoors, and we're going to be able to open up the doors in the gymnasium on both sides. We're asking to have 2 spectators per athlete for wrestling. They will have a limited schedule, unlike they've had in the past, and we feel that we can do that safely. So those are the items that I have for you today. I've added some additional guidance that we're doing around wrestling, besides the return to interscholastic policy that New York State has put together. We've added that, a little additional safety measures because it's a high-risk sport. Any questions?
You're asking for 2 adult spectators per athlete, not per senior athletes.
Yep. So in spring sports, so the only one we're asking for senior athlete is fall 2, and that's swimming and volleyball because they're indoors right now, and that's what Section 10 has asked us for the guidance on those.
But you're not limiting to the senior athletes?
For spring sports? No, we're not.
Seems contradictory. Volleyball's in the gym, correct?
Correct. So and swimming's in the pool.
I
just want to make sure you knew. You're welcome anytime.
It seems contradictory that you can wrestle in spring too and have 2 spectators per person, but you can't play volleyball and have 2 spectators per student.
I understand what you're saying. They're not gonna start wrestling probably till the middle of May. With our numbers going up right now and daily, me having to contact trace with athletes. If I didn't have the vaccine and a couple of my coaches last week, we would have been shut down too. So we're hoping by the middle of May that we'll get to that point, and that's why we've added it now, because we don't have another meeting before they start their wrestling matches.
Who was in that meeting?
Excuse me?
That meeting that didn't happen,
What meeting that didn't happen?
was that section 10?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, thanks.
anytime.
We're trying, hopefully as things start to move in a more positive direction, trying to open things up. We did obviously get some step back the last week or so with what tends to happen. The trend is after every break, we see more positive cases. We had another positive case today at one of our elementary schools. We had several last week in junior high and high school.
Just so you know, there'll be schools that won't have spectators at wrestling.
Good. Well, it's good to see we're being progressive with this.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Last thing that I have is, time is getting late, I'll run through some of the main pieces of the school budget. At our next board meeting, we will provide a presentation and public hearing on the budget. I think it was mentioned earlier that when we looked at what our condition was or what the state of the state was back in October, there was a lot of discussion of possible cuts because of the deficit that the state was facing, and there wasn't looking to be additional state aid. A lot has changed since then, as we saw with the state budget coming out this past week, and our district did see some considerable state aid as well as federal. With the new, particularly the federal aid, with the new American CARES plan. So, rescue plan, American Rescue Plan. So, the facilities committee, the finance committee, excuse me.
It's getting late for everybody.
It is getting late. All right. So really the 3 goals of the finance committee has been to minimize the increase in the tax levy, also to try to reduce the amount of fund balance we're using in the budget, and then most importantly is programming for our students. And I think those 3 goals with the funding that we received are able to be realized. So let me just mention 3 things. What is in the budget? What we saw in the state budget overall was an increase of $3 billion statewide, which reflects a $1.4 billion or 7.6% increase in foundation. If you remember, foundation aid was frozen last year. Now, overall, the state's looking at a $1.4 billion increase, plus another $443 million in expense-based aids, and $1 billion reduction in the pandemic adjustment. In other words, last year, the state budget was balanced based on putting federal money in, and that was the first stimulus plan. There's been 3 federal stimulus plans, one last March, and one last December under the previous administration, and one this year under the new presidential administration. And so last year with the CARES Act, the state balanced the budget based on that federal money.
That 0%.
Right, just,
yeah.
They took that money out and they put the new federal money in. Now under this budget, they have taken all that federal money out, but they put state money back in. There's very little federal money that's being used to balance the education piece of our budget. They did receive $12.5 billion of other revenue for their state budget, which eventually will go away. but the money they put in for education for schools was with state money and not federal. So that's a better outcome for down the road for schools. They fully funded the expense-based aids like BOCES, special education, transportation. You'll see in the state aid run that they provided the December stimulus money, which is the CRRSA Act, as well as the American Rescue Plan. So you'll see two different pieces of money, and that's what we showed you with the state aid run. It also provides a 3-year phase-in of foundation aid, if they have the funding for that 3-year phase-in. Every year I show you how the formula doesn't work for Massena, that we're $9 million underfunded in the foundation aid formula.
Was that total, or is that each year?
That was
For foundation?
For foundation.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Because I know this year I said, why do you keep talking about that? We're never gonna get that. And we're gonna get it.
Well, we got a piece of it back
Yeah.
this year, and they're talking about phasing it in over the next 3 years.
So what was the answer to that question? I'm
It's,
sorry.
the 9 million is in total, I think it was. Yeah, so it's not that.
I think that's, I don't think it was total. We were owed way more than that.
Was it 9 million a year? I know over the years it was always brought up in every budget.
Each
If
year,
we were
Matt.
if we were fully
Each year.
funded.
That's annually.
It's
But it
annually
is
9
annual,
million?
But it's a total that we're owed annually, yes.
Right. So it's not the total that we're owed, period, but we're not gonna get that back.
Right, we're not gonna get that.
We'll be going forward.
Right.
Yeah,
So
okay.
there's the potential for another 7 million a year if we get 2 this year? If they're true to their word?
They fund it the way that they're
What
talking.
they said is 50% of the difference between full funding, you get 50% of the difference between full funding where you're at now next year, and then 100% next year after that. Well, they say it's there, we'll see. I mean, until we get it.
Well, they're going in the right direction.
I mean, for us, for sure.
The difference totally in the state between is about $4 billion. If the foundation aid formula was running on formula, schools would be getting in total $4 billion more a year. We would be receiving $9 million of that $4 billion. So how, on the state level, what you see, and if you look at the presentation I put in there from NISTIS, it shows you where the funding, some of the funding came from. Part of it was that the projected tax, personal income tax projections came in better than they thought. Okay, that was one piece of it. There's a graph in there that shows you that they came in better than they had originally thought. So this economy rebounding, they're getting those taxes. Second, they raised taxes on the wealthy. And that's also a slide in there. People making over $1 million moved to a different bracket. People making over $2 million went to a different bracket. People who are in corporations as well. So they are raising, projected to raise another $3.5 billion in those tax increases, which are subject to end in 2027. Okay. So that money would not be there unless they pass another law that continues. They also authorized mobile sports betting. And that mobile sports betting will bring in about $99 million more to the state and expected $500 million when it's fully implemented. And then they received the $12.6 billion from federal money, as well as schools received the $8.99 billion in federal money as well. So that's what's in the state budget. What's not in the state budget is the proposal to cut expense-based aids and STAR, which would be offset by federal money. They were going to do that. As I said, they did put federal stimulus money back into the school's education budget. They also didn't combine all of those aids like BOCES and transportation into one category. That was rejected. Transportation aid reimbursements, we didn't get all back that we were expecting with standby costs. They only were providing standby costs from March 16th to May 7th of last year and didn't do anything with this year. What I mean by that is, last year when schools were shut down, we were still paying our drivers. We were still expected to keep them employed, but in the fall they said we wouldn't get the aid on it, and that would leave a hole in our budget. They've given some of that money back, but not all of it, and we didn't see any money on one-to-one aids for the same reason. So what was in the budget for Massena? Our foundation aid increased by $2.3 million. $2.3 million, or about 10% in foundation aid. Our community schools aid stayed the same at $227,000. Our expense-based aids increased by $626,000, or 8.29%. Our building aid increased $767,000, but that's because we're doing a building project. So we're getting that aid and we're also spending it. We went out with a $50 million capital project, and we told the public that we would be, it would not be a tax increase, and this is the aid that we're receiving on it. We were also we were the only district that received the federal money for universal pre-K in our area. There was an increase of $674,000 to expand pre-K to full day, and that's what we're looking at. So we'll be looking at now as well. So totally for Massena, state aid was $38.5 million, and that was an increase of $3.7 million. Our budget would increase by $3 million, or 5.38%, to $59,712,726. A significant portion of that budget increase is the capital project. So as I said, we're getting aid in on the project, but we're also going to add in order to pay for the capital project. So it's both sides of the ledger. So with that, the increase in foundation aid, we are recommending, the Finance Committee is recommending a 0% tax increase for this year. And we're also looking at designating $1.9 million to fund balance instead of the $2.2 million that we had in the 2021 budget. That helps in our long-term financial stability. So that's our state aid and our budget recommendations. And then we have the federal aid with the two different, which was at the bottom of our state aid run, and that was the December stimulus money and the January stimulus money, that total, which can be used through the 2024-25 school year, of which 20% has to be allocated to address learning loss, is $12.6 million. And we're required by July 1st to develop a plan of how we will use the federal money and prioritizing spending on non-recurring expenses.
That's done, I go down. That computer just went out.
Sorry. You got her? Okay. So with that, we are working with our administration to develop, we've already started doing this, to develop plans, particularly dealing with issues of learning loss for our students, mental health issues that we've been seeing through the pandemic, and we'll come back to the Finance Committee and the board with recommendations. This is a lot better news than what we were facing last fall, for sure. And it sets us up for future over the next few years for the district. Support our students.
And there's a lot less talk of fiscal cliff these days. Is that because of the infusion of state money
not federal money?
The fiscal cliff partly comes from, they are using 12.5 million in federal money outside of education to balance the rest of the state budget. That eventually is going to go away in 3 years. But you notice there wasn't, there's off-track betting in there, but there was nothing in the budget about the legalization of marijuana either, so they'll be looking at that as a revenue. Whether you support that or not. Questions on the budget?
Okay, all set then?
All set.
Next up is our business group. You guys are ready? Right away?
So I just have the budget status and budget transfer reports tonight. Year to date, we brought in $39.6 million out of the $54.4 million budgeted. We have expensed $29.5 million, have $20.9 remaining encumbered for the rest of the year, and then a handful of budget transfers as well.
On the extra classroom activity report for the first quarter of 2021, January started with $166,000, cash receipts of $5,000, cash disbursements of $8,000, and in March with a balance of $163,000. On the March treasurer's report, the month started with $35.7 million, cash receipts of $13.1 million, cash disbursements of $5.3 million, and in the month with $42.7 million. The March internal claims audit report, 9 warrants verified in the amount of $5.3 million, 316 total claims. There are two errors with PO dates. And on the BOCES claim audit report, 1 warrant verified in the amount of $1.97 million, 4 claims total with 0 errors.
Any questions for Nick and Mallory? Thanks, guys. We can move on to recommended actions. Start off with the BOCES administrative budget for 2021-22. I have a motion to approve that budget.
So moved.
And a second. Okay. Any more discussion or comments? All those in favor of the BOCES budget for 2021-22? Next would be the appointment and voting on board candidates for BOCES. Anyone have a candidate they'd like to nominate?
I'd nominate Mr. Latimer.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Latimer?
I second the nomination. If you nominate, I can second.
Don't have to second.
You don't have to.
Not for now.
So we vote on that, please. Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. I would like to nominate Dr. Jack Zay from Edward Knox. Any discussion?
Good choice.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Any more nominations from anyone? Okay, I guess we'll call it that. We'll have 2 candidates that we approved to send on to BOCES then. All right, where was I? Resolution to approve the Massena Central School District budget for 2021-22.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Approval of the Massena Central School District Property Tax Report for 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Approval of a change order. This one was a credit for masonry work at Jefferson.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Next we'll move on to our policies. The first group are policies for second reading or adoption. It's policy 3420, non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district. Policy 5633, gender-neutral single occupancy bathrooms. Policy 5761, drug and alcohol testing for school bus drivers and other safety-sensitive employees. Policy 6110, code of ethics for BOE members and all district personnel. Policy 6180, staff-student relations, fraternization. And policy 6120, equal employment opportunity.
I'll move those policies.
Second.
Any discussion on any of those?
There weren't any other than that policy 5761. There wasn't anyone other than bus drivers. The other safety-sensitive employees don't exist, right? I think I asked about that last
Isn't
time.
that what we should talk
They
about?
consider, other sensitive, safety sensitive are considered mechanics as well in that policy.
Okay.
Anything else? You got a second?
Who was the second?
All those in favor of the adoption of those policies? Thank you. Next group are first readings. Policy 7551, sexual harassment of students. Policy 8130, equal education opportunities. Policy 6123, staff identification badges. Policy 6124, cellular telephones. Policy 6560, determination of employment status.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? All those in favor then? Thank you. Next two are for review only. Policy 6121, sexual harassment in the workplace, and policy 6561, professional services providers.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Approval of the budget status report.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Approval of the budget transfer report.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Approval of the extra classroom activity report for the first quarter of 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Approval of the treasurer's report for March 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Approval of the internal claims audit report general for March 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Approval of the internal claims audit report for BOCES for March 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Approval of the CSE CPSE report.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Next item, first one would be resolution to approve sick leave allowance for a new hire in special education.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Next one is also a resolution for sick leave allowance for a new employee, Director of Transportation.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. I'd like to recommend numbers 1 through 44 on our personnel actions list.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Okay, I guess that opens up for any new business board members want to discuss or get some info now.
I guess I'll just mention that a few weeks, like 3 weeks back or so, we did have a training session, a review on the super eval evaluation tool that we're using for Mr. Brady's annual evaluation. And for those that were unable to be there, the presenter, Mr. Hartz, is more than willing to provide another, lasted for about an hour or so, very informative. And if anyone is interested in having that repeated, he's willing to do that. And I would certainly urge anyone who hasn't used the product to do that. Contact me, please. It was not. No, he's very flexible and willing to.
It's fairly intuitive. You can get through it without training, I think, but the training is definitely Any communication from our public out there?
Mike, do we have anything in the chat? Nothing? Okay.
No, how about a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
All those in favor?
My dad.
Yeah.